All right. Hey, good afternoon. Scott Luton and Greg White with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Today's show, we're continuing our supply chain buzz, right, Greg?
We are indeed. Get your buzz on.
This series is dedicated to covering some of the latest developments that have taken place the previous week and offering our quick take on them and what's important about it. And you're going to want to stay tuned because the information that we offer today, and especially the stories, are certainly going to increase your supply chain leadership IQ. Greg, before we get started here today, what do we want to share? What we want to invite folks to do?
We want them to sign up. Subscribe, man. We want them to subscribe.
That's right.
So they don't miss a thing wherever you get your podcasts.
That's right.
Also, follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, because no matter where you are then, when we go live, you'll be notified of these as
That's
well.
Right.
How'd I do, boss? Was that pretty good?
You did great. Yeah, so typically, Greg, as you know, a lot of the market is very familiar with our podcast, which has been around for several years. I think we've published right at about 350 episodes. And we've seen some new audience members join us on the live stream that found us here first.
Yeah.
So if you dig this live stream, we'd invite you to check out our podcast wherever you get your podcast from. I thought you did great, Greg.
Also, Facebook. I can't believe I left that out. I mean, that's news in a way, because we see a lot of people getting business content on Facebook. Right. They're familiar and comfortable with that platform.
That is right.
And so strangely, I mean, we're seeing a lot of play there.
Well, you know, it is Monday, so we all get a couple extra free passes.
Thank you.
But we have really enjoyed this revamped supply chain buzz. And Greg, let's dive right into this day in history, May 4th.
I love it when you do this.
All right. All right. So I think we've got a graphic or two. So ever hear the phrase, actually, we're going to do a quick wave with that graphic before we even get started.
Are we? Let's do it.
All right. We're having a little fun with the supply chain buzz here today. That's right. So, Greg, have you ever heard the phrase line of demarcation?
I have heard it.
So have you ever wondered where it comes from?
I have wondered, Scott.
All right. So on this date in 1493, Pope Alexander VI divides the New World between Spain and Portugal. And of course, that famous line, which wasn't really tied to a specific parallel, is the infamous line of demarcation, which is this one. 1494, I think, is when it was fully ratified by the two countries. And then a treaty comes along a few years later, and they shift that line quite a bit eastward. But that's where that line of demarcation comes from. So and
that was to divide east and west?
It was to divide the New World amongst Spain and Portugal. It ignored other European countries at the time, and so those European countries largely ignored the line of demarcation.
Okay.
Hey, when you're Pope, you could do stuff like that, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, so
those were the days.
Next up, May 4th. So, Greg, we are really missing our sports, right? We had a family get-together the other night, and it reminded me of a couple of deer bobbleheads that I broke out from the closet. This one here, Chipper Jones, Hall of Fame third baseman for the Braves. This was a bobblehead in his last game played in the home stadium, which at the time was
Turner Field.
That's right. Yeah, I'm trying to neat little trivia question there. And of course, that's right. And Jason Hayward. Cubs got him now, but we were really missing our sports. So on this date, May 4th, 1871, the first professional baseball league opened, called the National Association. Greg, any ideas where the National Association was formed?
Couldn't even guess.
Well, I'll give you a hint. It's in Indiana.
Oh.
Pick your favorite city.
Indianapolis.
Close. Fort Wayne, Indiana. I say close. I'm not sure how far Fort Wayne is from Indianapolis. But, So not only did Fort Wayne host the first ever professional baseball association, but our Crackerjack research team, led by Malcolm, found that Fort Wayne has been home to a slew of inventions and innovations through the years, including gas pumps and refrigerators that all originated from the city of Fort Wayne, Indiana. I think that's pretty cool.
And you said Crackerjack in regard to baseball. How about that? I wonder if that was subconscious.
As always, Greg White doesn't miss a single thing. Let me pause for just a minute. I'm trying to get our live feed on our LinkedIn Live channel to see who is tuned in. We like to give shout outs to folks as they tune in. Maybe the internet needs a pass on this Monday. I don't know.
Really? Is LinkedIn not lighting up?
It might be running a little bit. It is. Okay. All right. Well, we'll see if we can't get that up here in a minute. All right.
Well, Clay now has been exposed to the free world, so he can just pop in whenever LinkedIn comes up and let us know. Absolutely.
So Clay, who's quarterbacking along with Amanda this session here today, kind of behind the scenes, if LinkedIn Live is good to go, we've got some folks that are tuning in and giving shout outs as they typically do. Feel free to chime in, and let's make sure we're polite and we offer up hello on a Monday afternoon. Okay, so last things we wrap up here in our opening remarks. So today is celebrated as Anti-Bullying Day at the United Nations. It's Bird Day here in the States. It's Greenery Day in Japan, amongst other things. Wow. And around the world, may the 4th be with you. It is Star Wars Day internationally, right?
That was my wake-up text from my mother. Huge Star Wars fan.
Celebrate it, you will. How about that? Your mom, which one was her favorite movie out of all the Star Wars?
Now it's called A New Hope. The original Star Wars was her favorite. I recall, by the way, she knew it was going to be a great movie. And my younger brother is a huge fan, has all kinds of collectibles and things like that. Hit him at just the right age. We were driving around and she said, "Do you think you'll want to see this Star Wars movie?" And I said, "Nah, it's probably going to be another one of those half-baked sci-fi flicks."
Right.
And wow, was I wrong, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I loved it. I love it. I love every one of them.
Well, so I think there's been 9 core movies and some supplemental movies that all play in the Star Wars universe, and I can't imagine the total revenue, what that figure is at now. Maybe Malcolm can pick up on that and feed it to us before we leave. All right, so the LinkedIn Live feed is up, so we should say hello to a few folks that join us here at the top of the show. Sasheen, a procurement executive. Hello, Sasheen. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us here today. Cassiano, who's been on a couple of these live streams. Mechanical engineer, above my pay grade. I'm not speaking for you, Greg, but certainly above my pay grade. Glad you were here.
Definitely.
And we look forward to their comments and contributions and as well as their take on these stories that we're going to cover here today. All right.
Hey, Scott, Malcolm has shot me a note and said that Star Wars has brought in $9.31 billion US dollars.
Unbelievable.
Most of that going to George Lucas because he basically gave them the first movie to get them to do it, but kept all the merchandising rights and the rights to the subsequent movies.
Really?
Yeah. Smart dude. Talk about a believer, right?
Right. That's right. He had a vision, and he's carried it out over the last 40 years now. I want to say first one came out in the mid 70s.
1977 is when Star Wars came out. Yeah.
All right. So as much fun as we could have with the trivia on the front end of the Supply Chain Buzz.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about the second episode and installment of Supply Chain Trivia Night. So to our listeners, stay tuned. We've got another great fierce competition coming up just next week, but more to come on that momentarily. So Greg, let's dive into the buzz. What do you think?
Let's do that. Yeah, let me first of all credit this story to Verisk Financial. They have this Commerce Signals report, and they've been kind enough to share this one for no charge. I think they ordinarily charge for these things, but they've shared their April report, and it's got some pretty revealing information in there. So they, again, Commerce Signals reports that consumer spending was down 11% in March. Some industries were down more, with travel related industries all down between 69 and 92% in the final week of March. 92%. And that's virtually not operating. In fact, airlines were the ones down 92%. So that obviously the trend has been down, and this is a heat map, so you can see where it goes green to lighter green to white, then to red. You can see the trend.
That's what saved my eyes
in the chart.
Can you imagine this was just a spreadsheet? I love how they've overlaid the heat graphics to it.
Yeah, and it gives you, and you know, you don't need to look too much at the words. If it's dark red, it's pretty much travel related. So there's a lot of travel. I think the least decline that we saw in the last week of March was rental cars. So people still are at least renting a few cars here and there. But you know, if you think about air travel, look over your house and see if you see any vapor trails. All right, they are few and far between right now. So now there was some good news. Grocery was up over 50% for 2 weeks. There in March, it started to level off as people's pantry stocking has maximized. I don't know about you, but we're finding a lot of things to eat at home and a lot of different ways to eat it. Although we have gotten out to restaurants, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit, and mass retailers and some other retail was up pretty significantly. Mass retail up around 10-15% over the same period of March into April. Now let's talk a little bit about restaurants. Restaurants were down 60% in March. Recall that the world really started shutting down the second week of March.
Right.
And you can see that even online sales of restaurants, which had been trending 30% above the previous year, dipped to almost no improvement over the previous year, dipped by about 60% from where they were. But you can see over the last couple of weeks, I say see, if you read in the article, there's actually a chart that represents it, so you can see it. But you can see in the last couple of weeks of March and the first week of April that I think a lot of restaurants probably closed. They opened back up and have slowly gotten their feet under them in terms of supporting online orders and curbside pickup or delivery. I got to tell you, I don't know how much you've been doing this, Scott, but we've been going to occasionally to curbside pickup just to get out of the house.
Yes, absolutely. You know who? This is a great story. This analysis right here. One of the first people I thought of after you sent this story over is Kathy Morrow Robertson, who crunches this stuff in her sleep and spits out industry insights. She just joined us at least for a minute or two on the live stream. So Kathy, hope you're well. And Kathy is joining the Future of Supply Chain panel, which is hosted by KPMG, coming up on May 14th. So looking forward to
that's with Atlanta, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
And as busy as she stays and her and her firm, what a great get for that panel when we talk about the future, especially.
Let her know that I'll be on my best behavior.
Okay.
You won't have to tell me to hush.
All right. Hey, real quick, along those lines, I want to say hello to Jasmine, part of the PGS 360 team. So hope you're doing well, Jasmine. Thanks for joining us. And our dear friend, Joseph Moretta, who's tuned in to the live stream a couple of times. He was another fierce competitor in the supply chain trivia night, right? And and Kathy says, hello, Scott and Greg.
Hey, Kathy.
Great to see you. I hope she's doing well.
Good to have you out there.
All right. So as you continue, so these are really interesting numbers. Before we move to the next story, what else sticks out here to you? And give us some more good news if you got any more of that in your pockets.
Yeah. Look, I think grocery is going to continue to hang tough, though we're starting to see some limiting of meat orders. There's some news on that in the most recent news we've seen. Toilet paper is back in stock in a lot of places, not not completely, but we'll still see some outages. We're in Georgia, for anyone who doesn't know, Georgia in the U.S., and we have some easing of restrictions where you can now, under certain circumstances, wearing a mask and socially distancing and all of that, you can eat in a restaurant. And we actually did that yesterday. And it was eerie, I must admit. It was a little bit eerie, but the restaurant we were at did a fantastic job keeping everyone safe, separate. They had an indoor and an outdoor. So, but anyway, so I think we'll start to see, as restrictions loosen, people will responsibly. Right. I want to implore you to do it responsibly. Responsibly get out there and, using the appropriate precautions, get yourself out of your house. We went and visited a new park yesterday as well. And it's just, it's good to get out there. And I think that will start to shake things loose. I can tell you this, I discovered that I need new hiking shoes.
Well, hey, so there is good news. And I was, to add to that anecdotal good news, I try not to take anything significant away from just one visit, but we were out in a couple of stores for some essential items over the weekend, and the shelves look so much better than they did, say, 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. So kudos to, again, all that supply chain workforce that keeps things moving. There's so many brave men and women behind the scenes, and also, as we like to talk about, the folks working the lines, the checkout lines. I mean, they don't get enough appreciation either. Hey, real quick. So Kathy is working on one of her next blog articles, you name it, and Lloyd, and she shared that in the stream. And our friend Lloyd Knight, president, one of the co-founders of Vetlanta, asked Kathy, is there anything going on in the world of logistics to write about, Kathy? Of course, being sarcastic there. Yeah. So love
a little bit.
A lot of banner in the streams here. Okay, so we're going to dive into our next story, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's do that. Let's see if the technology will work with us here today. All right. So the second story here that we're going to tackle today comes to us from the Associated Press, and it talks about, speaking of logistics, on a more somber note, it talks about a lot of folks that are struggling, especially in the trucking industry, in particular, independent truck drivers. So let's walk through this here real quick. So pictured is Mr. Rodney Marine. Is in the snapshot here. He is an independent truck driver. His company owns one truck. In fact, Rodney says he's not in small business; he's in micro business, is what he was quoted as saying. So he's
micro enterprise.
That's right. Yep. Love that. It takes all kinds. He's been driving, Greg, since 1995. He's logged as many as 10,000 miles each month. So drivers like Rodney help make up truly the backbone of the supply chain, the transportation industry. Right. In fact, there's over 311,000 for-hire motor carriers in the U.S., and about half of those operate a single truck, according to Todd Spencer, president of the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. You see their logo there, OOIDA, which I stumbled across here in the last few days. Great organization, a lot of thought leadership there, and what I loved about it is they really have their finger on the pulse of the drivers, which – again, going back to our Driver Appreciation Week program a few months back,
right?
Talk about people that are underappreciated. You got to thank a trucker, right, Greg?
Yeah, no doubt. And as the good news in this industry is that, like so many other industries, the small business companies and people keep this industry rolling. Yep. Literally.
Absolutely, great point. All right. So, but many of these independent truck drivers, as this article points out via the Associated Press, many of them are struggling. So Rodney here says that before the pandemic, he was grossing about $10K per month. And now that's been cut just about in half. So unfortunately, he is not alone, as the story talks about. It's a very straightforward problem when you think about it. With the pandemic in play, the industry has a ton of trucks, but not enough profitable loads for them to carry. So a lot of drivers are making a lot less per mile. In fact, up to 65, 70% less per mile, which is just remarkable.
Wow.
According to these numbers here. So the challenge doesn't stop there, though. Unfortunately, drivers like Rodney and a few others that are cited have also had a hard time getting benefits from the $2.2 trillion coronavirus relief package. Mr. Marine here has filed several times, and the current status is, hey, we're processing all applications in the order they came in. So it's been pretty frustrating all the way around. One other person that they talked about here, Mr. C.W. Boyd or Mrs. C.W. Boyd, I'm not sure, been in trucking for 46 years. They have 12 tractors, 16 trailers based in Oxford, Pennsylvania. He, too, applied for the emergency loan and has yet to see a dime. But, the cool thing he has done and his team has done is they have refused to cut the driver's pay, even though the company's revenues have taken a huge hit. So I'm not sure how long that companies like that can keep that up, but I admire that from a leadership standpoint, taking one for your team.
Well, and, I saw, you see all kinds of statements made. One I saw that I think people can definitely relate to is your people will remember how you treated them during this crisis, as they would any crisis. But look, it's a great opportunity to do the right thing, and clearly C.W. Boyd has the wherewithal to do that, and I really appreciate that.
Yep. So we're seeing from Diana Balin, and I apologize if I'm getting your last name pronounced wrong, Diana, but she says, hey, very important topic and situation. Thanks for the accurate data. And Diana, if you can, we'd welcome any of our audience that can speak firsthand. We actually reached out to Mr. Marin and to see if he could come on the show and tell us firsthand what he's experiencing. We've reached out. We've put a couple irons in the fire in recent weeks with other truck drivers or firms, because we really want to hear the perspective of these truck drivers and hear firsthand what they're experiencing. And we think it'd be a fascinating couple of conversations, in fact. So Diana, if you or any of our other members of our audience can speak firsthand to it or weigh in with other experiences, please do. Joseph Moretta shares this on LinkedIn. Last mile delivery is one of the most critical components of the delivery process. That's right. And one of our next stories is going to shed even more light on just how critical that last mile is.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to go back, finish up this story here, number 2. So Mr. C.W. Boyd says, quote, it's the little guys that make up the heart of the transportation industry, and we're the ones that got ignored, end quote, as it relates to some of the relief work and funds that have been passed and are being distributed. So, I hate hearing this. This is, in a time where we really need as much good news as we can. This is a big gap, right? Truck drivers are so critical, and the transportation industry is so critical to not only global supply chain, but keeping stuff on shelves, keeping stuff moving, protecting the psyche of consumers everywhere, really. And we've got to figure out a way to bridge this gap, right, Greg?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I was talking to a friend today who is a plumber, and he's pretty well versed in, because they have not received any stimulus money or whatever you want to call it either, but he was aware that AutoNation, one of the largest car dealership chains in the country, has received $77 million worth of stimulus money.
That's a problem.
That the owner of that company, who I won't name, also happens to own an NFL franchise. So I'm sure they're not hurting for money.
It's a big problem.
It's this. Look, this program was deployed rapidly. It didn't go through the same sort of analysis and discussion that it ordinarily would, and they left, unfortunately, some very, very big holes in it.
Yep.
Some companies, some of the larger companies who've actually received funding, have returned it. But it's virtually an automatic transaction. When your application is processed, you get money put into your bank account.
Yep.
So
we've got to figure out this problem. I mean, it's great to see the government act fast, but when the loopholes and the gaps are this big, and you've got the backbone of global supply chain and supply chain here in this country, of course, I hate to be dramatic, but let's face it, a lot of these folks are left out in the cold with little to keep their businesses going other than their personal savings.
I'm really concerned about that, right? About that aspect of the marketplace, because I think every day about somebody who must be, you and I, Scott, have been those people, right? Who are living day to day, paycheck to paycheck, trying to, to make a small company go.
Right.
I keep thinking, I can't imagine if this had occurred when I was starting one of my first companies. I don't know. I really empathize with people. We're trying to help here with Supply Chain Now and personally, however we can. But it's worrisome. It is, undoubtedly.
So again, if you're a truck driver and you stumble across this program here today, we want to hear from you. We'd love to get your firsthand account of what's taking place and get your views and insights on it. That's really important to us. All right, let's keep trucking. Let's keep moving along to story number 3 here. That was not an intentional pun. It just kind of came right on out.
You've got a gift, boy. Clearly, that's 2 in a row.
All right, so let's talk about story number 3, and we're going to be talking about medical supplies with a little bit of a White House intervention, right?
Yeah, and I think necessary intervention. So President Trump is planning an executive order to require federal agencies to purchase U.S.-made medical products. One of his trade advisors, Peter Navarro, said, in addition to that, other steps are necessary, because what he says is that never again should we rely on the rest of the world for our essential medicines and medical countermeasures. Medical inserted by me. And what he said is, not only do we need to mandate this practice, but we also need to facilitate a better business environment for the production of pharmaceuticals in the States, because it wasn't so long ago, by the way, that they were actually produced in the States. Deregulation so that it is actually feasible and profitable for companies to produce in the States again. Puerto Rico, for instance, was a large producer of pharmaceutical and medical supplies until not so long ago, and then the benefits of producing in the States were far outweighed by the cost savings in China. Some people in government now and from government in the past are concerned that an executive order could prompt China to curb shipments of PPE. Though Navarro has said that they are revising to mitigate this risk, I have to say, this is personal commentary, that if what we're concerned about by doing something right, and I think we would all agree, regardless of what you think about this picture up here, I think we would all agree that mitigating our risk in terms of essential medical products and supplies is in the best interest of, let's just not even say the country, it's our personal selves, right? So we definitely need to do something about it. And China has, the thing that concerns me about this concern, that we could be concerned that they could curb shipments, is that they have already threatened to withhold antibiotics. We now know, based on a report that was produced and published in Bloomberg last Wednesday, that our intelligence agencies have discovered that they delayed reporting and obviously have underreported the level of infection throughout their country in order to hoard supplies, and so that they would have enough for their people.
I believe that report you're talking about is the intelligence agencies of 5 countries. I can't remember the name that they called it. Wasn't quite like Party of 5, but it's something like that.
Yeah.
But it's not just the U.S. intelligence community that's getting to the root cause here, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And just another interesting study, the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission. Wow, how about having that on your business card? U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission warned that U.S. customers and military are heavily dependent, quote unquote, heavily dependent on China for drugs, the actual product of drugs, the pharmaceuticals themselves.
It's Monday. You get a
Active
pass.
pharmaceutical ingredients, APIs, and obviously PPE, which I think everyone knows about. This a Congressional Research Service March report said that China is responsible for 30% of all PPE shipments to the states, and the U.S. imported $12.7 billion in pharmaceuticals, antibiotics, and medical devices in 2018 from China, and China supplies 80% of active pharmaceutical ingredients, APIs, to the states, meaning those are the underlying products that make pharmaceuticals work, even if they are produced here or elsewhere in the world.
Well, you know, remember when we did the story 2 or 3 weeks ago about the illicit drug industry, and just it's almost like it's the same numbers driving the illicit drug. They've got it. They clearly have a knack for the origination and the proximity of some of these APIs and some of the other ingredients that go into the illicit drug market. While I'm not sure about you, Greg, I'm willing to let China keep the illicit drug industry and have a monopoly on that if we can bring some of these the appropriate amount, the appropriate, especially ones, you know, where I like to separate a lot of these stories is you've got some significant national security related supply chains that clearly now is more visible than ever before, at least to maybe broader members of the community, and in the industry and certainly the media. We got to figure out which of those prioritize and figure out what we're going to do, right?
We do, and we have a model that had worked in the past, that had the appropriate funding and balance and capability, and it also gave jobs to places like Puerto Rico where jobs are sorely needed. So there's certainly a way to do it. We can adapt the model that we had previously and reshore this, and limit our exposure to China, because China is again, I'm basing this on the preponderance of the evidence. Mm-hmm. They are not just risky; they are dangerous. Right? I mean, their policies, their governmental policies, have shown aggression towards the states. So there's no real way to. I mean, there's no real reason not to change that. Again, this is a trade advisor, Peter Navarro, sorry, and this is not the totality of his quote, but what he said is, forget about what country that is. Never again should we rely on the rest of the world for our essential medicines and countermeasures. And by the way, many European countries, the UK, India, and many countries around the world, they have specific mandates for this already, where they don't allow more than a certain proportion of goods to come from, particularly from China.
Well, you know, this is a first today. I've gotten a tweet from my mom, Greg. We let off talking about the message you got from your mom this morning around Star Wars. I've got a tweet from my mom about, and she might be a little bit partial. She loves the buzz. I was reaching out to her because I really wanted her to weigh in on medical supplies in general. You know, she retired as a registered nurse and a certified diabetes expert a year or two ago. I'd love for her to weigh in on maybe some of the firsthand experiences when it comes to, you know, medical supplies coming from different places and whatnot. Because we've certainly heard in recent weeks and months about the quality and some of the safety defects, and about how some supply chain leaders are really vetting their current supply chains even before they get to the conversations once we break through about where, if and where to realign some of these sourcing decisions. Okay, before we leave this story, anything else to shed light on here?
Just a couple things. One thing that hits a couple points. One is, you said earlier, and this is true. You said that people always want government to act quickly, I would argue that, and I would implore people not to want that, and certainly not to demand that. It is never, ever a good thing when government acts quickly. They act quickly in moments of war, in moments of miss, or twisted information. And this is a government is a big, big ship. And whenever they do anything to act quickly, there are always unintended consequences, no matter what a government does. But when they act quickly, there are even more and more devastating unintended consequences. So I think we want, as much as we want this resolved rapidly, we're dealing with two things that are going to operate at their own pace. One is government, and the other is nature. So we have to be patient, right? And we have to recognize that that there are risks to hasty action here.
Well said. Well put, as always, kind sir. All right, are we ready to move to some good news?
I am. That everyone else is too.
All right. So this may be a unique and a little bit different version of good news, but I think this is good news, and I'm really jazzed about this fourth and final story here today. So Walmart announced last Thursday 2-hour delivery service. Now, we knew that was coming, right, Greg? Walmart clearly in recent years has been figuring out its an improved version of its e-commerce strategy, right?
Right.
So we knew this was coming. So this was reported by Supply Chain Dive, and we're going to walk through this a bit here. So last Thursday, as we mentioned, announced this 2-hour delivery option. They're calling it Express Delivery, Greg. They did not put all their spend in the creative naming department, and that's okay. It is what it is, right?
Yeah.
It's like, Prime rolls off the tongue of everybody that uses Amazon these days, and make no mistake about it, Express Delivery is going to be is meant to battle Amazon Prime and Amazon Prime Now. I think that's what Prime Now, right? That's the 2-hour version I think Amazon offers. Okay. Yeah. So the pandemic, as reported by Supply Chain Dive, really sped up Walmart's time frame of rolling this out. So the overall time frame here, Walmart has been piloting this express delivery in 100 stores since mid-April. It's expanding to 1,000 additional stores here in early May. And then in the weeks to come, after that second phase, it's going to roll it out to 2,000 more stores. I'm not sure if that rollout is just in the States or global, but so they're moving quick on this. Now, this is something that surprised me. Walmart will use and expectedly expand its army of personal shoppers to pick orders in the store. Do you happen to know just how many personal shoppers that Walmart has, Greg?
I didn't know they had personal shoppers. No.
I wasn't really aware of that either. 74,000 personal shoppers. Can you believe that?
Wow.
Now, I think some of those, if I was reading between the lines, and maybe the article said this, were hired to boost the bandwidth here. So 74,000 personal shoppers, and the current plan is to leverage the company's existing delivery partners for last mile, that critical last mile that Joseph Moretta referred to earlier.
Right.
So I got to tell you, I love, Walmart took its punches, and this is no destination they've arrived to, but they have come so far in a relatively short amount of time to retool and revise their e-commerce approach, and as is going to be critical here, really leveraging their 5,400 stores they have in the U.S. alone. In fact, Charlie O'Shea, I think we referenced his opinions in earlier shows. He's a senior retail analyst over at Moody's.
Moody's, yeah.
He calls this only the latest development in the retail arms race that we're seeing. And he says that stores, quote, stores are tremendous assets if used the right way, end quote. So, Greg, again, this is exciting to me to see this, to see Walmart retool its efforts to battle in the retail Cold War that we're seeing. What's your take on this?
Well, I mean, there's more good news here. Walmart also delivered on $180 million in worker bonuses for those workers who have worked during the pandemic. And they're coming up on quarter end, and they're able to fully fund that bonus as well. And they actually accomplished hiring 200,000 people since March 19th.
Wow. Now, to be fair, Amazon had a popular store that was out there in the last week or two was talking about just how effective Amazon has also been at adding talent. And I'll tell you that whether you're Walmart or Amazon, to hiring those numbers in this special unique environment, you really have done something, right?
You have, and it's a great service, frankly, to the workforce to do it. And there are things that there's probably first of all, let me go back a step. Remember when we thought Walmart was the big bad wolf? Right? How the tables have turned.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, now we're cheering for Walmart. Remember, any of you who've ever lived in $1 million house, you never wanted a Walmart anywhere near your house. You know that. I know
no
you
idea.
said it. But now think about the distribution landscape that they've created and the capability that they've created, and they have a lot of the capabilities, a lot of the products in the store that you need. And I think there's something that people don't really know too much about Walmart. When you research e-commerce retail, you start to discover that companies like Walmart and Best Buy and others, they don't just sell the products that they have in their stores that their merchandisers select. They have a marketplace as well that is like Amazon's, where anyone can sign up and sell on that marketplace. And one of the things we've been talking about, two of the things we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks are the fact that Amazon, undoubtedly the largest marketplace in the U.S. in North America, probably has deprioritized anything that's not essential goods. And I've found myself shopping other places because it may not be essential based on their description, but it is still essential based on mine. And Walmart has a marketplace. In addition, Amazon was recently reported by the Wall Street Journal and a number of their
exhaustive research by the Wall Street
Journal. Research with a number of their employees to have been knocking off their marketplace sellers' products and white labeling them as Amazon products. And Walmart has not. I mean, just to be clear, they have not. So maybe this is a good avenue for some of those sellers out there that are struggling to get access. The one thing I'll say about the Walmart marketplace is it's sometimes a little bit difficult to tell if you're buying from Walmart or from a seller, and maybe they could make that a little bit more apparent. But they're still,
and they will.
Companies
Companies like this, they are really focused on that voice of the customer, and especially the voice of their customer, right? Why their customers come back to Walmart. There's a couple of very clear-cut reasons, just like Target does that, and different organizations. But I, for one, applaud what and your point, not 4 minutes back, about how we all were complaining about Walmart being an 800-pound gorilla, probably 8 years ago, 10 years ago, I don't know,
maybe less,
maybe less. And now we're all looking.
We're rooting for them, right?
Yeah, that I never really thought about that, but it's been very interesting.
It's hard to be a fan of these big behemoths. It is, frankly, because you know that, and Walmart has their own history of pushing their vendors around and various and sundry other offenses, right? But the truth is, it's better to have two behemoths punching each other in the face than just one.
That's right.
This is a good thing. It is a good thing for someone else to rise up in the e-commerce marketplace, because it will create a competitive situation that will be to the benefit of all of us.
Love that. So let's ask our let's get our voice of the customer. Folks, y'all weigh in. Is this a great development? Are you looking forward as much as we are at what comes next here, and how Walmart's jumping back into the fight and playing catch up to some degree? I think it's going to be fascinating to see how they really leverage their huge advantage, one of the huge advantages they have over Amazon, which is that those 5,400 stores. And we've seen with BOPUS and other acronyms that center around these facilities, how they're being really weaponized to better serve customers and consumers these days, demanding what they want. I think it's gonna be a fascinating study in the weeks and months to come.
Well, what's great about it is you get the best of both worlds, and I've experienced it. You can choose at 2:00 in the morning to go in and get that quart of oil, right? Or you can choose to have it delivered tomorrow. And now maybe you can choose to have it delivered at 4:00 in the morning.
That's right.
Right. I mean, I'm sure the 2 hour won't be all day and all night, but
yeah.
But still, it is a great benefit to be able to select buy online and pick up in store. Just go to the store, maybe just because you want to get out,
right?
Or to have it delivered. And Walmart is really well equipped to do that with 5,400 stores.
All right. So as we transition, Greg, it's a family affair today. I'm getting tweets from my mom, and my dad is commenting on YouTube. These are firsts. I
wonder if my dad even knows what YouTube is.
Gotta say hello to my dad, Terry Luton there, who retired, I think, as we talked about it a couple weeks ago, after 43 and a half years at Savannah River Site in Aiken, South Carolina. So good stuff there. All right. So let's move right along here as we wrap up. Those are really the four stories to our audience, the four stories we were tackling here today on Supply Chain Buzz. Let's share some things, some next steps where you can plug in with us and some of our speakers and guests we have coming up. Right, Greg?
Yeah. I mean, this is a great one. Mike Griswold is the keeper of the Gartner Supply Chain Top 25. There are no physical events for them to present this at this year, so we're gonna be talking through some of the key takeaways from the top 25. This is always fascinating. They've added some new componentry to their evaluation process, which is corporate responsibility. So now you need to have a ethical and sustainable supply chain to score points, as well as just an efficient supply chain. And I think that's a fantastic step in the right direction. I think it will shake things up in the top 25. But yeah, learn about who is doing what the best in this supply chain. Gartner, of course, the premier analyst organization in terms of technology and supply chain and understanding the marketplace. So join us for that. Mike will have a ton of great information, I know.
He never has a bad show. He's one of the most consistent guests we have, chock full of really practical insights that whether you're a COO of a multinational $10 billion business, or if you're a operations manager in a smaller family-run manufacturer in South Carolina, or wherever you are, at all points in all industries, there's going to be some key takeaways that you can learn from Gartner's research of these big public companies. Especially one of my favorite parts, Greg, is some of the common themes that is fueling success, bottom line success, that I'm sure Mike's going to weigh in on during the webinar on May 27th.
Yeah. I mean, the great thing about Mike is he was a practitioner first. He was in supply chain, in retail, and distribution and manufacturing before he became an analyst. So none of this is theoretical.
Right.
His knowledge is hard earned. So.
Yep. And it's a complimentary event. So we've got the direct link to find more information about the webinar and get registered there. Again, May 27th, you'll find the link in the show notes, regardless of what channel, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, LinkedIn, Twitter, you name it, that you're tuned in here today. Yeah. Okay. So that's our serious next step, right? And then we've got our back by popular demand, the voice of the customer demands it, the second episode of the Supply Chain Trivia Night here at Supply Chain Now, right?
Yeah. Really looking forward to this. It was a horse race the last time. Let's see. Well, Kathy Roberson, who may still be on with us, Kathy Roberson, Peter Heflin, Angie Reno, Sarah Barnes Humphrey, Chris Gaffney, the Chief Supply Chain Officer at Coca-Cola, and Mr. Inventory all took it down to the wire. And Mr. Inventory, Demetrius, won by a nose.
Yes.
In the last stretch.
I'm probably just a big dork that loves trivia, but it was such a great time and a fierce competition. And we're looking forward to round 2 because we have improved the process. So gone is the timing delays that caused a bit of a challenge for some of our listeners. It's going to be streamlined. The questions are going to be even more challenging. And I think we're going to have a bigger field. So hopefully, Halet, who is tuned in on Facebook, hopefully you're joining us for Supply Chain Trivia Night, and thanks for tuning in to our live stream here today.
Well, and Nikhil, who was participating at 2:30 in the morning in India, so hopefully we can alleviate some of the delays issues that he had as well, because I feel like that was a strong contender right there.
That's right. Absolutely. So again, Wednesday, May 13th, 4 p.m., we're probably going to have a little mini concert provided by our friend
Joseph Sregala.
There we go. Absolutely. Joseph is
Sregala's husband. Yeah. Who we interviewed on a live stream last week, Tuesday, right?
Come to find out, small world, that Joseph is a globally recognized musician. And a lot of the venues where he normally plays, of course, they're these challenging times. So we invited him to share his talent right here on the front end of the Supply Chain Trivia Night. So looking forward to that. Kind of a la Will Hairway, who made an appearance a few weeks back.
Yeah, we just couldn't book Will.
No, his agent's tough.
His agent's tough.
All right, so May 13th, and again, kudos to our current reigning champ. We'll see if Mr. Inventory, Demetrios James Callis, we'll see if he can retain the belt. It's going to be tough, but come out and join us. Come out and challenge him for the title belt, and we'll see y'all May 13th at 4 p.m. for Supply Chain Trivia Night Part 2.
I know Angie Reno is going to be there, and I know Sarah is going to be there.
Absolutely.
They've been smack talking each other over the last week or so.
Yeah, I've seen that play out in social media streams. So.
Yeah, I love the competitiveness.
All right. So as we start to wrap up today's Supply Chain Buzz, maybe arguably a bit more opinionated version of the buzz from me and you here today. But, these are stories. Hopefully our audience picks up on this. We share the stories that not only we feel are important, but stories that will make an impact, and stories that really resonate with us and how we view industry and business and our audience for that matter. So with that in mind, Greg, what's one final thought that you'd like to leave with our audience?
This is the final thought. It's got to be two thoughts, okay? It's going to get worse before it gets better, but it is going to get better. You can see from the trends, from some of the information that we showed today, that things are starting to tail. But at least what I'm seeing anecdotally and what we're starting to see in the data is that the trend is starting to come up. It's not quite accelerating yet, but at least the trend is coming up. So hopefully we've reached a bottom and we're starting to come out of it. We talked about this a little bit last week, right? The sort of valley of despair. And now that we've got data that helps us see a little more clearly into the future, and we can leverage that data as knowledge to help us navigate these difficult times as we're going ahead. We are finally really starting to rely on facts and data.
Yep.
And I think that will help us accelerate our growth out of this process.
Great.
We're seeing good success in countries that have either loosened restrictions, or countries like Sweden who've not had restrictions. Unfortunately, people we've had fatalities during this, but we're containing it, I think, fairly well. Let's put it this way: it's not anywhere near the largest killer of human beings this year. It's not even the biggest killer in terms of illnesses, at least in the United States. So if you can cling on to anything, take that.
Yeah. Two other thoughts from my end. First up, please, even if you don't go and seek a trucker out and really understand their point of view, that's a blind spot for so many people, so many consumers. But just empathy is an incredibly important currency right now, and you got folks out there on the front lines that continue to do what they do and continue to do their jobs despite how challenging, both personally and professionally, it is. So we got to love on these truckers, number one. And number two, hey, Clay, if you can, pull up the Resilience 360 website. I want to make sure folks have that, or you can come in the stream. That's fine.
Come on in. Come on.
And Terry Luton says, wash hands, wash hands. I completely agree. That's important. And you know what? I think you'll see a generational shift. Appreciate washing hands much more in the years and decades to come. But
I mean, first of all, if you have not been washing your hands, you did not have a parent like Terry Luton, obviously. He probably has been telling you to wash your hands your whole life, Scott Luton.
Oh, that's right. Well, in particular, my granddad, Dick Rutland, we did not set foot in the kitchen without insisting. He never dragged us by the ear, but you were going to wash your hands before you sat down at the table, and miss him every day. But one last thing on a serious note, Resilience 360, we're reconnecting with that team, doing our third podcast, I believe, coming up this week. They have been working overdrive, getting a lot of data and analytics, helping a lot of people, supporting the Allen American Logistics Aid Network, which is a great nonprofit doing great work. They stood up a supply chain intelligence center with the folks from Allen here in recent weeks. And they've got we're all about trying to provide resources, especially inexpensive and free resources to our audience. Resilience 360 has a free webinar coming up on May 14th. I believe they are publishing today. And you know what? Unfortunately, we're moving into in a couple months is hurricane season. And, you got, of course, storm season in the Midwest and the Southeast, with tornadoes and spring storms and summer storms. And then that gives way into hurricane season, which is so challenging for so many people, a lot in the Southeast and up the Atlanta seaboard. And they're going to shed some insights on what to expect and probably some resources as we move into that time of year to help a lot of people out. So check them out at resilience360.dhl.com. All right, Greg, I think that is a wrap, right?
It is indeed. I'd like to acknowledge one additional fan, Brian Glick. So I was on one of those happy hour things, and people were admiring this chair. And I have to say, it is one of the most.
Captain Kirk sits in that chair. That's impressive.
I've got the con. Yes. Beam me up. And Brian just got his delivered today, so he sent me a picture. So,
yeah. We don't have that handy, do we?
The discussion went something like this: it's got a headrest and a lumbar support and a mesh back, and it costs $199. So,
what a deal!
It is a
delivered by Walmart in 2 hours.
What's that?
Delivered by Walmart in 2 hours, maybe.
Not exactly. I'm not going to do any advertising, but if you want to know where to get a chair like this, just reach out to me. I'll be glad to let you know.
Fantastic. Always a pleasure. I love the buzz. It's very conversational, a bit casual, a bit opinionated, and a lot of the highly relevant and recent developments. And of course, the interaction from our audience is A+.
Yeah.
All right. So, Greg, we're going to encourage our audience to go visit supplychainnowradio.com for a variety of resources, podcasts, live streams, webinars, like the one coming up from Gartner, events, like the event coming up, the Atlanta Summit that's hosted by KPMG, which will be a national event where we're leading the Future of Supply Chain breakout session with incredible thought leaders like Kathy.
Yeah.
We're nailing down the rest of those panelists here in the days to come. And be sure to find us and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from, right?
Yeah. Spotify, Twitter, subscribe anywhere or follow us anywhere, social media or on your favorite podcast
right.
or on YouTube.
That's right. And, we're experimenting.
I said that. Seems like.
Well, it's been a long time since we've been in the real studio. That'll change, and that'll change certainly in the months to come. We're experimenting with the Supply Chain Buzz time frame. I think one of our next shows we're going to experiment with the lunch or the noon hour. So y'all weigh in. Let us shoot us a note. Give us some feedback. You can send that to Amanda at supplychainnowradio.com. So,
Scott, what if they say never? No time is good for this.
Well, all feedback is good feedback and actionable feedback, right?
Yeah.
So I want to thank Diana for tuning in here today. Diana, looking forward to having you on the webinar and other podcasts. It looks like Spotify is your channel of choice. On behalf of the entire team here at Supply Chain Now, Scott Luton wishing all of our listeners nothing but the best. Like Greg said, it's going to get tougher, but then it's going to get better. So stay safe. Remember, there's much brighter days that lie ahead, and we hope to see you next time here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.